Good evening. Today is the 7th day of January 2016, and we continue with our explorations in Savitri, always with our beloved brother Alok Pandey. And we are still in Book 2, Canto 3, and I think in 2 more sessions we'll complete it.
Yes.
As always, a letter of Sri Aurobindo. And this is now jumping from 1938 to 1946, just 4 years before he left. You will see, when you get the full typescript of the first 3 books, that Savitri has grown to an enormous length, so that it is no longer quite the same thing as the poem you saw then. There are now 3 books in the first part. The first, the Book of Beginnings, comprises 5 cantos, which cover the same ground as what you typed, but contains also much more that is new. The small passage about Asupati and the other worlds has been replaced by a new book, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, in 14 cantos with many thousand lines. There is also a third, sufficiently long book, the Book of the Divine Mother. In the new plan of the poem, there is a second part consisting of 5 books. 2 of these, the Book of Birth and Quest and the Book of Love, have been completed, and another, the Book of Fate, is almost complete. 2 others, the Book of Yoga and the Book of Death, have still to be written, though a part needs only a thorough recasting. Finally, there is the third part, consisting of 4 books, the Book of Eternal Night, the Book of the Dual Twilight, the Book of Everlasting Day, and the Return to Earth, which have to be entirely recast, and the third of them largely rewritten. So it will be a long time before Savitri is complete. New paragraph. In the new form, it will be a sort of poetic philosophy of the spirit and of life, much profounder in its substance and vaster in its scope than was intended in the original poem. I am trying, of course, to keep it at a very high level of inspiration, but in so large a plan covering most subjects of philosophical thought and vision and many aspects of spiritual experience, there is bound to be much variation of tone, but that is, I think, necessary for the richness and completeness of the treatment.
While you were reading, I was reminded of something that Sri Aurobindo wrote with reference to the Indian culture and Isha Upanishad. So he says that even if the only surviving literature of India's past was Isha Upanishad, it would be enough to resurrect the Indian civilization. That is the power of this just 18 verses, deep mystical poetry. Well, on similar vein, we could say that even if Sri Aurobindo had written nothing else, none of the now 35 volumes or 34 volumes, none of the letters, none of the works of the Arya, done nothing else, and just given to this world Savitri, we would be eternally grateful to him.
Yes.
I mean, this is simply amazing. And we were talking about perfection, that's why he was recasting. Now the passage that we are going to read is really a marvel how he is revealing to us what kind of consciousness the gods of these high vital worlds, which are on the borders of eternity, what is their consciousness? How vast it is? So we have a very interesting description because though we see gods as an individual, everybody we see as individual form, but what is the consciousness in the form? The divine, cosmic divine holds the whole universe within himself. That is the vastness. And we read those lines in Savitri, untranslatable lines. Arcturus and Belphegor burn in a corner of his boundless self. There are no Indian equivalent terms for these two constellations, incidentally. So translators must have had a tough time. So that's one experience of the cosmic divine, where the universe is within oneself. Now the gods are not that vast. They can't contain the whole universe. But nevertheless, they can almost compete with the vastness of the universe. So here is Sri Aurobindo's lines which bring out this fact with such power and directness, imposing on the safety of the stars a race and laughter of immortal strengths. The nude godchildren in their playfields ran. What is their playfield? The cosmos is their playfield. The stars for them are like, football. So they have match in that playfield and they run. We have stories in Indian mythology of this kind, that Hanuman wants to, swallow the sun. He is attracted. He says, oh, this is a nice apple, so I can have it. Now, if you read the story from a certain point of view, you will feel, oh, this is sheer fantasy and weird fantasy. But this is to show that in the inner consciousness, Hanuman is not a human mortal, but an immortal Godhead who has taken birth in a, mortal body. Yes. So this automatically gives you the proportion of consciousness, that here is a person, though in the garb of a monkey, but his consciousness is so vast, so swift, that he can literally pace with the stars, reach up to the sun, and literally cover it. So we have a similar description here. The nude godchildren in their playfields ran, smiting the winds with splendor and with speed. Of storm and sun they made companions, because constantly they are drifting. To make them companions is not just an inner friendship. You have to keep pace with their pace. Just to imagine the way Earth is spinning around. We are on a giant spaceship which is moving at fantastic speed. So these gods have them as companions, sported with the white mane of tossing seas. So we have in Greek mythology these gods, for instance, of the storm, Poseidon. So he rides on the sea. He loves the troubled seas. So all this is just to indicate the consciousness in which these gods and higher beings dwell.
When you said spaceship, reminds me of Buckminster Fuller.
Right.
Who termed it Spaceship Earth.
Yes. Indeed it is. Circling around the suns.
Circling around.
Slew distance, trampled to death under their wheels, and wrestled in the arenas of their force. Of course, their wrestle is a gamble. It's not a wrestle of, hate, but a swift embrace of love and sport. Imperious in their radiance like the suns, they kindled heaven with the glory of their limbs, flung like a divine largesse to the world. So it's like they were just distributing their radiance all around, divine largesse, like people who are spendthrift, giving away excess that they have in their purse. So they are flinging their radiance onto the world. A spell to force the heart to stark delight. They carried the pride and mastery of their charm as if life's banner on the roads of space. So, why they are doing it? Is this their job, to go around this universe in a state of delight? It's quite a job, because whatever is spilled from them is received by earth, and it inspires hope and joy within us. It's a very interesting story. So many stories I am reminded of when I read these lines. There is a story about the gods and the titans who are fighting over the nectar of immortality. So a little portion of that nectar spills on earth. And in India, because with every story you associated something very physical. So the place where the three rivers meet, Saraswati, Yamuna and Ganges, is supposed to be the place where the nectar spilled. That's why, every 12 year you have Kumbh Mela there and everybody comes. This story works amazingly at many levels. At one level, the three rivers, the confluence of three rivers is the confluence of the three nadis. Shobinda speaks about it, incidentally, in the foundations of Indian culture, that Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati are the three nadis in the human system, the subtle channels, Ida, Pingala and Sushmana. When they are together in a state of perfect balance, that is the time you can experience the nectar of immortality. Not otherwise. So it's not one spot. On other side, whatever is happening in heaven, their fights, their quarrels, their victory, their defeat, all that spills upon earth, and we earthlings unfortunately or fortunately experience that. So that is why gods have a different level of operation. It's not that their actions are only confined to that, because their deeds have an influence upon earth. When the gods win a victory, human beings are filled with hope and joy and peace. When they are defeated momentarily, because that's what is the law of balance by the titans, human beings go through a lot of darkness, hatred, etc. So it's here we see that this is the job given to them. They have to just spread their radiance and joy upon this world. Ideas were luminous comrades of the soul. Mind played with speech, cast javelins of thought, but needed not these instruments toil to know. This is the difference between the consciousness of the gods and the human consciousness. Human consciousness must labor to even know anything. It picks up information from the surface, puts it together, analyzes the data, then arrives at some kind of a temporary construct. Then it gets trapped in that construct. And it begins to see that. It's a strange way it works. And then it theorizes. Then new idea comes in and breaks that old constructs. A new construct forms. That's how human consciousness advances with so much difficulty. Centuries pass where one particular construct holds sway over humanity, like in whole Newton's world.
Yeah, we've seen it in science again and again.
Again and again. Till someone comes and breaks that with a new idea. And a new construct now follows. Then again that breaks, and again a new idea. So this is how it proceeds. Because the mind is not an instrument of knowledge. It is only an instrument to receive and transmit. But these gods don't have this necessity because they have a different consciousness. So they directly receive the knowledge and they cast ideas like javelins of thought, straight to the mark. Mind played with speech. It was not laboring after speech. Ideas were luminous comrades of the soul. Whatever the soul experienced, the ideas perfectly, aptly expressed and described it. And not the other way around, that thought is trying to understand the soul, that, what is the difference between Jivatma and the psychic being and the soul? Many such questions which the mind poses. But when you have the experience, it's so simple, direct. And then any number of different words can express the same truth. I was reading these prayers and meditation for one of the issues of All India magazine, wanted to take out selection. So many places Mother has spoken of the supermind without ever using the word supermind and supramental. And she has simply spoken very clearly of the supramental consciousness.
And very simply, lucidly, candidly.
Without putting a name. But we become trapped with a name. So that is the beauty that, their ideas are comrades of the soul, and the thought itself becomes an instrument, and words are formed to give this turn or that turn. And that's what we see in Savitri, receiving from above and using words as a medium. Therefore, quite naturally, knowledge was nature's pastime like the rest. Knowledge is a very otherwise laborious, strenuous thing. To get knowledge, you have to do a lot of tapasya, you have to strive, you have to gather information. People, the typical sign of a knowledgeable person is he must look very serious. There should be, a lot of grey hairs and totally lost to the world. But this is another kind of knowledge. It's a pouring from above. The lid is blown. So there is nothing else which is needed. And it's a pastime. It's not something towards which one labors. Knowledge was nature's pastime like the rest. Investitude with the fresh heart's bright ray. This is a very interesting thing.
Yes.
And Sri Aurobindo speaks about it in Thoughts and Aphorism, that knowledge, when it is fresh, then it is authentic. The moment you prepare and you repeat the same thing next time, then it's no more authentic. Because it's become already dead and dry. So very often systems are created by that. But when it is fresh, the heart is inspired and it manifests, expresses knowledge. So we have such a beautiful description here. Investitude, it takes on a form, it wears a dress with the fresh heart's bright ray. The same thing.
Yeah.
But each time it is something new, something beautiful. We see in Mother and Sri Aurobindo so often this happening. And early God instincts, child inheritors, tenants of the perpetuity of time. Though they are time bound. So they are, but for us, we are time bound in a different way. We get stuck in a time warp. And it's very difficult for us to move. But they are moving with the rhythm of the universal. So they are tenants in the perpetuity. So as time changes, they change. Their consciousness is not only vast but plastic. But our consciousness, as long as we are child, it's changing with time. As we begin to go beyond 15, I know it all. I don't need to know anything from anyone. At 25, we become encrusted over. Adults. At 50, we are old because all our knowledge looks back at a phantom past. And over a period of time, it becomes more and more. The narrow waist and the broad mind change places. So, at 70, we are just the reverse. This is unfortunately because we are stuck in a time warp. But here, their knowledge is advancing with the flow of time. Their consciousness is flowing with the flow of time. How beautifully Sri Aurobindo brings it. Tenants of the perpetuity of time. They are not stuck to any. They are tenants. Today you are in this house, another house, another house. So they are flowing with the universal rhythm.
And then this line. Oh.
Still thrilling with the first creation's bliss. Every moment is new, unique, just as the first moment when the worlds were released. This experience, it's very interesting. We can have, we can just conceive this experience a little bit. That first time when people come to the ashram, those who are, of course, marked for yoga and many others in some way or the other, they go to the samadhi and they feel, oh my God, this is like homecoming. Then they come next time, yeah, it's good. Then after some time, yeah, good, I'm going to the samadhi and come back, okay, I have to meet someone. Then after a time, they start living here and, did you go to samadhi? No, I think I'll go tomorrow. Now, why is it that? The samadhi has not changed. It's the same. I still meet people who have come for the first time and feel so beautiful. But over a period of time, human consciousness has this tendency. It cannot recover, recreate, re-experience that first contact's thrill. Which is what Mother gives this example. Long back there used to be a note to the newcomers. It's there in her published works. And I think even now it should be given to everyone. Dada used to give it to those who would come. He would give a note to the newcomers. So the mother says when people come here, they come with the psychic in front. So they find everything beautiful. Every person is a saint. The food is simply superb. But when they begin to stay here, then the old consciousness and the old nature starts coming in the front. And the saints appear as devils. The food appears as boring and same mechanical food. Every day I have to take this. Let's go for a change to Ananda Diyar Bhavan. So, but here, they are always experiencing that first creation's bliss. The joy of contact with God's hands. They steeped existence in their youth of soul. This is also the secret of youthfulness. To live in the perpetuity of time. Now, see again, Sri Aurobindo's combination of words.
Yeah.
An exquisite and vehement tyranny. Now, so often Sri Aurobindo has given to negative words a very positive turn. This is something very unique. And this no dictionary can actually unfathom. What kind of tyranny? Gods are tyrants, they are tyrannous. It's like somebody asked the mother, dictator, and she said, yes, a benevolent dictator.
Yes.
God is a dictator if you like. I mean, he has the last word and the first word.
And the form of government, she said, a divine anarchy.
Anarchy. So, God has the first word and the last word. In the middle, he allows us all our say. But the first and the last are his. But look at,
But to the mind, it seems paradoxical.
paradoxical and exquisite and vehement. He is adding emphasis.
Yeah.
Vehement, tyranny. The strong compulsion of their will to joy poured smiling streams of happiness through the world. Literally telling us, how can you be sad? How can you despair? Come on, cheer up. Vehement. And what kind of tyranny? It is pouring joy into our hearts.
Yeah.
We refuse. They tear open the lid. We say, no, I love my darkness. I am very happy to be in despair. No doing, nothing doing. Take it away, forcibly. There is a line in Savitri where Sri Aurobindo says, the joy they refuse. That also line comes in the same canto.
Yes.
The joy they refuse, and yet they pour upon us this joy. Will to joy. Poured smiling streams of happiness through the world. This is their work. There reigned a breath of high, immune content. It's very interesting. Again, we see the combination of words.
Yeah.
Immune content. Content very often is followed by restlessness, boredom. It's not immune unless it goes into tamas. What is immune content? It is safe. It cannot be afflicted or affected by anything. A state of inner content, unaffected, a fortunate gate of days in tranquil air, a flood of universal love and peace. This is what the gods experience. A sovereignty of tireless sweetness lived. Again, we experience something of that sweetness on earth, but alas, for a few brief moments. But their sweetness never tires. Like a song of pleasure on the lips of time. This line is simply amazing. It's lilting. A sovereignty of tireless sweetness lived, like a song of pleasure on the lips of time. A large, spontaneous order freed the will. Even the will did not have to strive, struggle and strain. Spontaneous order.
Yeah.
They are one with the universal rhythm. They are one with the will of the divine. It manifests spontaneously without an effort. We have to make so much effort to know what the divine will was. What is the right thing to do? And then when we know it is the right thing, then yet we have to struggle a lot to really reach that point. But for the gods, a sun-frank winging of the soul to bliss. The breath and greatness of the unfettered act. Human beings cannot have unfettered act. We are always in conflict. It is a privilege either to the animals or to the gods. Animals have unfettered act. The lion leaping upon its prey doesn't think twice, oh, I am going to kill a little baby, what his mother will experience. The gods, they know it is the right thing and the true thing to do, and they do it. It's for other gods and the Supreme to tackle the consequences. They are acting under his command, or the human being who has to go through. But human beings have to experience the conflict. That's why our acts are always fettered, as if there are chains. And the swift fire heart's golden liberty. And all this is possible because, as we read earlier, that there was no falsehood, no crookedness. There was no falsehood of soul severance. What a marvelous line. Falsehood is that which cuts us from our own soul. We are as if born in falsehood. Our mind, life, body, everything breathes falsehood. And therefore we are living in a state of soul severance. And because of this soul severance, we are disconnected from everything else around us. And therefore falsehood comes. The will to appropriate, the desire to acquire, to make one's own what is apparently not your own. And it's offshoots, ambitions, etc. But when there is no soul severance, then where is the room for falsehood to come? So beautiful it is. There came no crookedness of thought or word to rob creation of its native truth. All was sincerity and natural force. So mind in that level, it doesn't have a play in that kingdom. They are spontaneously aware of the law of truth, they manifest it. Their hearts are clean, clear and pure, and the rest is not to be worried about. And now this marvelous line, their freedom was sole rule and highest law. This is the divine anarchy.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo says that in the beginning of creation and at the end, it is the divine anarchy which will be the culmination. But in the middle, it will lead us straight to the devil. This also he says. Human beings need some kind of a framework of rule. But there, because all is sincere, there is no problem. Would like to read a few lines in a happy series.
In a happy series climbed or plunged these worlds, in realms of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of Titan power. Life played at ease with her immense desires.
So it's not just one world, but number of them. Thousands of these worlds which are climbing up and down. So though we use in general the vital worlds or the mental worlds, but this is a very summary description. So we have read that at its highest, it was plunging into a sky of self, close to the absolute. At its lowest, in the Titan worlds, but they are typal worlds. So there, it plays everywhere. It plays with its desires. All possibilities in life are expressed through these worlds. 1,000 Edens she could build, nor pause. No bound was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. You have heard of one Eden. So there are thousands of them. Awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls, arisen from the breast of some deep, infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope. Oh, marvelous line. Smiling like a newborn child at love and hope. These are the only two things the child knows. Love, which it receives from all around, and hope, because everything is looking in front. The whole field is now before him. In her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will, no guide she needed but her luminous heart. The power of life had these two, and so too can those who open to this greater consciousness. No fall debased the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. So this is the consciousness of the gods, and that's why it's so difficult to understand their action. Even the action of those who have risen to a greater height, it's so difficult to understand because their consciousness is not cabined into a narrow frame. So, let alone the consciousness of the gods. I mean, we have so many stories, as I said, in Indian thought. Kali can destroy a whole creation. You can't say you are doing something wrong. Innocent people are dying. So much labor is gone. No, it's a different consciousness. Her own fair form will then bring it out. Because for the gods, there is nothing like a permanent destruction. The forms get destroyed. When Napoleon went across, we had, I think last year, the anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. So when Napoleon went across so much, war, conflict, destruction, to uphold the ideal of freedom, unity, brotherhood, what did Sri Aurobindo see? The arm of God striding through Europe.
Striding through Europe, yes.
We see a human being. That consciousness is very different. It doesn't live within those boundaries. And in Vibhuti, something of this can be experienced. And it's very difficult to put into a slot. So we see here, no fall debase the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. This alien night, of course, is the inconscient. That will be described later on. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy, spontaneously, naturally, as the rose blossoms. Abandoned to her rapid fancy's moods and the rich coloured riot of her mind, initiate of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the rhythms of God. At will she wove her wizard wonder dance, a Dionysian goddess of delight, a backend of creative ecstasy. This is life. A Dionysian goddess of delight. In whatever way it manifests, expresses, explores delight in countless ways. Later on, Sri Aurobindo will speak about it in another way. That's why in human beings, whatever we may do, there is a joy which is tagged to that. A joy even in sorrow, a joy in suffering, a joy in fall, a joy in virtue and a joy in sin.
Yes.
A joy in victory and a joy in defeat.
Yes.
That it savors that. Because that is its purpose. This world of bliss he saw and felt its call. A new movement starts. Ashapati is experiencing this, that there is this world high above. Suddenly his heart is drawn close to it. Though his feet, his body is still tied to earth. But he has already grown in consciousness and he is coming in contact with these worlds.
He sees it and he feels
He sees it and feels it,
but
glimpses it.
He can't enter it.
He can't enter it. This was the predicament of the rishis of the Vedas. They stood on the summits of the overmind or the intuitive mind and glimpsed the glory of the supramental splendor.
Yes.
That's why Sri Aurobindo says the supermind is there in the Rig Veda, even in Ishupnishad.
Yes.
So all that he can do is, standing on this mountain top of earth nature, Rishi Yagnavalk prays, O golden lid, remove this covering from your face. Show us the law of truth. Because he can see it, but he cannot enter into it. Still in the rays, not in the sun.
Yes.
So this is his predicament at this point of time, that he can experience that bliss, this greater world. It pours into his heart, but he cannot find an entry point. This world of bliss he saw and felt its call, but found no way to enter into its joy. Across the conscious gulf there was no bridge. This is the work, one of the works of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, to bridge the gulf. And the Mother has done it in several ways. When she was in Algeria, she created a bridge between after death, when people pass through, to the world of light. Eventually that's where we all go. But we have to pass through a gulf of darkness, of lower vital and dark domains. She created a bridge that all those who just have little faith in God, in whatever way, in divinity, they will get into this, what in modern language would be called a wormhole. Through wormhole you can enter cross dimensions of space in a jiffy. There was a movie Interstellar. It speaks about that actual test. So you can do time travel. So you don't have to go through the circuitous route of going through these dark vital worlds. You can enter into another passage. She was busy building that bridge.
And here she chose, I won't say any names, she chose a man to guide the souls safely to their resting place.
Yes.
And he did it for 20-something years.
Yes. That's true. So it's very interesting that, this is one of our tasks. In prayers, he says, what is the use of man if he cannot become a bridge between the unthinkable and that which has manifested? This is our real work, to become a bridge. And Mother and Sri Aurobindo are there. They have created the bridge, and something of that can grow in us. But just as we see in the beginning, Book 1, Canto 1, across the path of the divine event, the huge
foreboding mind
of night alone,
in her unlit temple of eternity,
stretched immobile upon the silence march. So he can feel it, experience it, but there is a gulf of night which he must cross. That's why we will see after this, he will go through kingdoms of little mind, little life, then greater life.
Yes.
Then he will plunge into darkness. Then he will emerge into the paradise. You can't pass. There is a gulf which it doesn't allow. And this gulf is actually a purgatory. If you really look at it like that, this conception of purgatory is very interesting. Or limbo. Dante speaks about it. So, why we cannot experience those things? Because in us all is not sincerity and natural force. Because the mind has come in. So we have lost that spontaneous truth.
Yeah.
So this darkness actually comes to purify us, to help us eventually find that true law of being. So all that is artificial, false, it tears away one covering after another. It's very painful. After all, what is painful? Painful is to lose what we cherish. But what we cherish is unfortunately not truth, but falsehood. So, it comes to really pluck that out. And we feel very unhappy, but it's doing its job.
And he gives that unforgettable line with such power.
Yes.
None can enter heaven who has not passed through hell.
So Ashupati is now experiencing this, that yes, we can feel it. It happens in yoga. All of us, I'm sure, go through it.
Absolutely.
That in the beginning, you feel it, you know it. There it is, around the corner, transformation. But then you suddenly experience after a while the gulf of your own nature. It's not your own nature, but a portion of the universal nature. You have to go through it. This is a passage. Ashupati goes through it in a very big way, through the cosmic darkness. And we have our own Chinna darkness to go through. Little portion. Our own cross to bear. A darker air encircled still his soul, tied to an image of unquiet life. It's still tied to that restlessness.
It's encircling his soul.
Yes. In spite of yearning mind and longing sense. Look, he's giving us a direct thing about yoga. That something in us wants it, knows it, feels it, intuitively senses it. In spite of yearning mind and longing sense, to a sad thought by grey experience formed.
This is one of the great poetic lines.
Mother has elaborated this, not the line, but this experience. He
Yes.
says, the big difficulty with matter? It has been molded almost entirely by suffering and struggle. So it cannot believe in grace. It doesn't believe that it's possible to spontaneously blossom. It's possible that there can be a grace which can carry you. It has been molded through struggle and suffering. If you see the evolutionary history, amazing, difficult condition, tough conditions, centuries, sometimes millenniums before one form has emerged. So matter doesn't know, it doesn't carry the imprint. And one of the work, of course, of the mother was to convince the cells of the grace. To imprint upon that yes, there is grace.
Yes.
And she reminds again that these sensors, the task of the adverse forces is to keep pointing out to us, this is wrong, that is wrong, this is bad, you are bad, this is bad, that is bad, everything is wrong and bad. She says they are doing their job, their task is to make us sincere, but they forget one thing. Because if they are going to make us sincere, why they are adverse? So she says their problem is they don't know grace. That's how they are adverse forces.
Yes.
They don't know that there is something which can override all these considerations and turn a block of stone into a goddess, as in the story of Ahilya, who is fallen from grace, become a stone. With the touch of the feet of divine incarnate, she changes into a goddess. So this is what is the miracle. Hope for few more lines. To a sad thought by grey experience formed. And this is what we keep passing on, unfortunately, to our children. Oh, you don't know life. Don't listen to these Pondicherry Walas who only talk about grace. They are all crazy people. God knows what they give in dining room food. Something not quite right. After that food, they start talking about grace, grace, grace. What grace? Look at my life. Miserable, wretched life. What to do if we experience grace? We can't deny the truth of that experience. It's so concrete. Even in rags, I am God. This is the experience that the mother grants us, so what to do? But people believe it. Oh, these people, they have gone nuts. But this is so true. But in life, ordinarily, when it's not blessed by the benediction of grace, it is so true that one experiences a sad thought by grey experience. You can't say it is good or bad, but definitely it's on the darker side. So, and a vision dimmed by care and sorrow and sleep. As we grow old, we should become more and more filled with delight. But reverse happens. We lose hope. We begin to despair. Oh, I know, I have seen all these things. It shouldn't happen like that. Actually, it should be even more delight, because you have had so much contact with the grace. So many more things added to your diary notes of the wonders of grace. It's because our vision is blinded. We look only at this side. Or the forces make us look only towards that side. And not towards the side which is those savior arms, which are constantly drawing us closer and closer to her heart. So this is where all this seemed only a bright, desirable dream. So Pondicherry people love to dream. Supramental. Look at this. This fellow died. That fellow died. Supramental. It looks like a desirable dream. Human beings will live in harmony, unity, peace when they are fighting in-house. Desirable dream. But they don't know that behind all this conflict, there is an undercurrent of unity. Yes. And that is very palpable when you see Mother's balcony darshan. I don't know. Earlier when they used to see, it's nice on dining room program, you showed it. It's very interesting. They will show Mother and they will show all these people. So your first response is, why are you focusing on human beings? Forget them, just show us the Mother. But it's very interesting. You see, when the Mother is on the balcony, everybody, forgetting their differences, is just looking up. And what you can feel is thousands of flames mounting up towards her. And one wonders, where is division? If you look at that picture in its totality, you will feel concreteness of unity in the depths.
And each one knew the moment she looked at you.
Exactly. Each one, that's true. This is the experience they have done. Everyone felt that she looked at me and she nourished me as if it was special for me.
Yes.
And there are instances where the mother not actually called the person, oh, you were not looking good. Please take an extra egg in your diet. God knows what the vegetarians will feel about it, but mother's recipe.
I think it was to Kunama, she said, Kunama, you weren't looking at me at Darshan? No, Mother, I had to see this fellow about this work and this fellow about this work. And Mother said, you do your work, I'll do your yoga.
Dyuman Bhai used to have this prayer.
Yeah.
Mother, I can't do yoga. I will do your work. You do the inner work, that is, I will do the outer work, you do the inner work. Mother said, yes, perfect. This is the deal I always want. We have a story in Ramayana like that when Rama crosses the river Saryu, so the boatman, Sita wants to give him something, So Rama says, forget about it, it's okay. So then she still insists that I'll give my gold ring. So she insists that, please, boatman, you have been very kind. This is the only thing I have. All our kingdom, everything has been taken away. Please accept it as part of your, what you deserve rightly. He said, no, you are doing it in a very cheap way. She said, what? It's a pure gold, hallmark, certified, ISI. She says, no. We are from the same profession. I don't want this deal. So what deal you want? You say the eternal offer, your promise. I have ferried you across this river, you ferry me across the river of life. Simple. I'll do your outer work, you do my inner work.
There you go.
So beautiful. Last 3 lines. All this seemed only a bright, desirable dream, conceived in a longing distance by the heart of one who walks in the shadow of earth pain. See, even in that experience, Sri Aurobindo never loses touch of the earthly realities.
Yes.
Of one who walks in the shadow of earth pain. So we'll stop here and continue on Saturday.